What if the person everyone overlooked suddenly became the one in charge? For years, Emily had been just another invisible face at Harrison's diner, working hard, getting nothing in return, and trapped in a toxic environment where favoritism ruled. She never dreamed that a single act of kindness toward a customer everyone else ignored could change her life. That one moment, so small but so powerful, would set off a chain reaction that turned her world upside down. The diner that once broke her would become the place where she'd rise, reclaim her power, and prove that even the most unnoticed person can become the one who calls the shots. You won't believe how it all unfolds. The smell of sizzling meat and stale coffee filled the air as Emily wove her way through the crowded restaurant. The clatter of plates, the hum of conversation, and the occasional sharp voice of the manager barking orders made up the usual chaotic symphony of her workday. She had spent the last 3 years serving tables at Harrison's Diner, a once respectable restaurant that had long since lost its charm. Emily had learned early on that hard work didn't always lead to recognition. She arrived on time every day, stayed late when asked, and covered shifts for coworkers who always had an excuse. Yet, no matter how much effort she put in, she remained invisible. Favoritism ran deep at Harrison's. The manager, Rick, had his favorites, waitresses who laughed at his bad jokes, flattered him endlessly, or slipped out back with him for extra breaks. They got the best shifts, the highest tips, and his blind loyalty. Emily, on the other hand, was simply there to pick up the slack. Tonight was no different. The Friday dinner rush was in full swing, and Emily was drowning in orders. She balanced 3 plates on her arm, forcing a polite smile as she set them down at a table where the customers barely acknowledged her. "Excuse me." A shrill voice cut through the noise. Emily turned to see Tina, one of Rick's favorites, leaning against the counter, twirling her hair. "Can you cover my section for a bit? Rick said I could take a break." Emily's stomach twisted in frustration, but she nodded. Saying no would only cause trouble. As she hurried through the aisles, she noticed a man sitting alone at a corner booth. He had been there for at least 10 minutes, but none of the other servers had approached him. His presence was almost ghostly, his suit slightly wrinkled, his face weary. He didn't demand attention, and because of that, he was ignored. Emily hesitated for a second. Why was no one serving him? She walked over and gave him a warm smile. "Hi there, sir. Sorry for the wait. Can I get you something to drink while you look at the menu?" The man looked up, his tired eyes showing surprise. "Coffee, please, and thank you." Something in his voice struck her. He was used to being overlooked, just like her. As she walked away to get his coffee, she had no idea that this small act of kindness was about to change her life forever. Emily set the coffee cup down gently in front of the man, steam curling into the air. He wrapped his hands around it as if savoring the warmth. "Rough day?" she asked, half joking, but the question felt strangely personal. The man exhaled a quiet laugh. "You could say that." He glanced around the restaurant, watching the other waitresses breeze past without a second glance. Not exactly the friendliest place, is it? Emily hesitated, choosing her words carefully. It has its challenges. The man studied her for a moment before nodding. "I see." Before she could say more, Rick's voice boomed across the diner. "Emily, quit standing around and do your job." Heat rushed to her face. She bit her tongue and turned to leave, but the man's voice stopped her. "Hold on," he said, pulling out a few bills. "Could I get the special?" Emily smiled, grateful for the distraction. "Of course. I'll have it right out for you." She rushed back to the counter, but as soon as she placed the order, Tina leaned in, smirking. "You really waste time on the weirdest customers. You know that." Emily ignored her, used to the subtle jabs. In this place, kindness was seen as weakness, and Rick's favorite had no patience for either. As the night dragged on, Emily continued working through exhaustion, dodging Rick's unnecessary scolding and her co-workers' thinly veiled hostility. When the man finally finished his meal, he left a generous tip and a small note scribbled on the receipt. "Thank you for your kindness. It doesn't go unnoticed." Emily's heart clenched. It was such a simple message, but it meant the world to her. She folded the note and slipped it into her apron pocket. Little did she know, by morning, everything would change. Emily walked home that night with aching feet and a heavy heart. The weight of the restaurant's toxic atmosphere clung to her like grease from the kitchen. She pulled the note from her pocket and read it again under the dim glow of a street lamp. Thank you for your kindness. It doesn't go unnoticed. For a moment, warmth spread through her chest. Someone had noticed her. By the time she got home, exhaustion won. She barely had the energy to take off her shoes before collapsing into bed. The next morning, Emily arrived at Harrison's diner 10 minutes early, as always. The moment she stepped inside, however, something felt off. Her coworkers stood huddled near the counter, whispering. Some glanced at her before quickly looking away. Before she could ask what was going on, Rick's voice cut through the air. Emily, my office. Now. A knot of dread tightened in her stomach. Taking a deep breath, she walked toward the back. Rick sat behind his desk, arms crossed, his usual smugness replaced by something colder. Tina stood beside him, smirking. Close the door, Rick ordered. Emily did. What's going on? Rick sighed dramatically, as if disappointed. Emily, we've been watching your attitude for a while now. You're not exactly a team player. She blinked. Excuse me? You're always questioning things. Always acting like you're better than everyone else, he said, shaking his head. That's not the kind of attitude we want here. Emily's pulse pounded. Was this actually happening? I do my job. I work hard, harder than half the people here, she said, voice steady despite the anger bubbling inside her. Rick leaned back, feigning sympathy. And yet, customers complain about you all the time. That's a lie, she shot back before she could stop herself. Rick's eyes darkened. Well, unfortunately, my hands are tied. We have to let you go. Emily stood frozen. Fired? For what? For treating a customer with respect? Tina chuckled softly, arms folded. She had known this was coming. Rick slid a final paycheck across the desk. You can collect your things and leave. No need to make a scene. Emily's fingers curled into fists. She had given 3 years of her life to this place, only to be discarded like garbage. She grabbed the check, turned on her heel, and walked out without another word. Her coworkers avoided eye contact as she grabbed her things. No one stood up for her. No one said goodbye. Emily stepped outside into the cold morning air, her breath shaky. She was jobless, blindsided, and completely lost. And then, her phone rang. Unknown number. Frowning, she answered. Hello. A familiar voice spoke on the other end. Emily, this is Mr. Harrison, the owner of the restaurant. We need to talk. Her heart nearly stopped. Emily gripped her phone, her breath caught in her throat. Mr. Harrison? The owner of the restaurant? Are you there, Emily? The voice asked. Yes, she said quickly, stepping away from the diner's entrance. I'm just surprised to hear from you. I imagine you are, Mr. Harrison said. His voice was calm but firm. I'd like to meet with you. Do you have time this morning? Emily stared at the Harrison's diner sign one last time before turning away. Yes, I do. Good. Meet me at Corner Cafe in an hour. My treat. Before she could ask why, the call ended. Emily stood there, stunned. Why would the restaurant owner want to meet with her? Did he know she was fired? With no other option, she stuffed her last paycheck into her bag and headed home to change. An hour later, Emily walked into Corner Cafe, a small but cozy coffee shop downtown. She spotted Mr. Harrison immediately, the same man she had served the night before. Her stomach flipped. He wasn't just some overlooked customer. He was the owner of Harrison's Diner. As if sensing her shock, Mr. Harrison gestured to the seat across from him. Please, sit. Emily hesitated but obeyed, her mind racing. I didn't know who you were last night, she admitted. That was a point, he said, sipping his coffee. I like to visit my restaurants anonymously. It helps me see the truth. Emily swallowed hard. And what truth did you see? Mr. Harrison leaned forward. That the staff ignores customers who don't demand attention. That the manager plays favorites. That the best employee in that building was treated like she didn't matter. Emily's chest tightened. Someone had finally noticed. I'm sorry for what happened this morning, he continued. But to be honest, I was going to fire Rick soon anyway. You just confirmed why. Emily's eyes widened. You were? He nodded. I've had my suspicions about the way he runs things, but I needed proof. You gave me that. And now, I have an offer for you. Emily's heart pounded. An offer? Mr. Harrison smiled slightly. How would you like to come back to Harrison's Diner? Not as a waitress, but as the new manager. I need someone fair. Someone who actually works hard, rather than relying on favoritism and power trips. And based on what I saw, you're exactly what that place needs. Emily's thoughts spiraled. A manager? She had never held a leadership position before. Could she even do this? As if reading her hesitation, Mr. Harrison said, You don't have to answer now, but think about it. This could be your chance to change things. Emily exhaled slowly. Less than 2 hours ago, she had lost everything. Now, she was being offered a chance to run the very place that had broken her. Could she do it? She looked up at Mr. Harrison. I'll do it. The moment the words left Emily's lips, a surge of doubt crept in. What did I just agree to? Mr. Harrison studied her expression as if sensing her hesitation. It won't be easy, he said. Taking over as manager means making tough decisions. It also means dealing with the same people who mistreated you. Emily swallowed hard. She knew what this meant. Rick's favorites, her former co-workers, the people who ignored her struggles would now have to answer to her. Still, the thought of proving them wrong sparked something deep inside her. When do I start? She asked. Mr. Harrison smiled. Tomorrow morning. Be there before opening. I'll be there to introduce you to the staff. Emily nodded, trying to steady her nerves. Okay. She finished her coffee, thanked Mr. Harrison, and walked out of Corner Cafe in a daze. Everything had changed so fast. Less than a day ago, she was just a waitress fighting to be noticed. Now, she was a boss. That night, Emily could barely sleep. She tossed and turned, replaying every moment in her head. Would the staff respect her? Would they try to sabotage her? Did she even deserve this position? The doubt gnawed at her, but every time she thought of Rick's smirk as he fired her, a new determination burned inside her. She deserved better. She would make sure no one else at Harrison's felt as invisible as she had. By morning, Emily had made up her mind. She was walking back into that restaurant. But this time, she wasn't just another waitress. She was the one in charge. Emily stood outside Harrison's Diner, staring at the familiar neon sign that flickered above the entrance. The place that had once felt like a prison was now her responsibility. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. The moment she walked through the door, heads turned. Confusion, shock, suspicion. Her former co-workers stared at her, their whispered conversations halting mid-sentence. At the center of it all was Tina, arms crossed, lips curled in a smirk. Look who decided to show up, she drawled. Did you forget you don't work here anymore? Emily ignored her and kept walking. Then came Rick's voice, booming from across the diner. What the hell is she doing here? Before Emily could answer, Mr. Harrison stepped inside. The entire room fell silent. No one had seen the owner before. Mr. Harrison looked around, his sharp eyes scanning the staff. Good morning, everyone. I'm James Harrison, the owner of this restaurant. I have an announcement. Rick's smirk returned. Oh? Finally decided to get rid of the deadweight. He gestured toward Emily. Mr. Harrison's expression remained unreadable. Then, he said 7 words that sent a shockwave through the room. Emily is your new manager. Effective immediately. The diner erupted. What? Tina shrieked. You've got to be kidding me, another server whispered. Rick's face turned red. Are you serious? He barked. She's just a hard worker, Mr. Harrison interrupted. Something this place desperately needs in charge. Emily's pulse pounded as she faced a stunned crowd. Rick let out a bitter laugh. You can't be serious. She doesn't have any management experience. Mr. Harrison's gaze hardened. Neither did you when I gave you a chance. The difference is she's earned it. Rick's mouth opened, but no words came out. Mr. Harrison turned to Emily. I'll let you take it from here. Emily swallowed hard, forcing her voice to stay steady. First order of business, she said, turning to Rick. You're fired. The entire diner went dead silent. Rick's face twisted in disbelief. You can't do that. Emily lifted her chin. Actually, I can. She glanced at Mr. Harrison, who gave her an approving nod. Pack your things and leave. Now. Rick's fists clenched, but he knew he had lost. With a muttered curse, he stormed toward the back office. Emily turned to the rest of the staff. I know this is unexpected, she said, but things are going to change around here. No more favoritism. No more toxic work environment. Everyone gets treated fairly. Tina scoffed. We'll see how long that lasts. Emily met her gaze head-on. I wouldn't test me if I were you. Tina looked away. Mr. Harrison smiled. I think you'll do just fine. Emily exhaled, feeling the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. She had won the first battle, but she knew the real fight was only just beginning. The tension inside Harrison's diner was thick enough to choke on. Rick was gone. Emily was now the boss, and no one knew what to do with that. Her former co-workers watched her like a stranger who had invaded their territory. Tina's glare was the worst of all, pure venom. Emily knew she had to act fast. She couldn't afford to hesitate. She clapped her hands together, gathering everyone's attention. All right, let's get to work. The staff hesitated, waiting for someone to protest. No one did. Slowly, they moved back to their stations. But the air was heavy with resentment. Emily pushed forward. She had a job to do. By mid-morning, the first rush of customers had come and gone. Emily stayed busy, checking orders, watching the floor, and making mental notes of what needed to change. She saw things she had never noticed before, like how certain waitresses always left the harder tasks to others. How some cooks ignored food quality just to push orders out faster. She was starting to see why Mr. Harrison needed a new manager. As Emily stepped into the back kitchen, she overheard whispered voices. She won't last a week, someone muttered. Rick's gone, and she thinks she owned the place. Emily rounded the corner and found Tina and two other servers huddled near the drink station. The second they saw her, they went silent. Tina smirked. Something wrong, boss? Emily crossed her arms. If you have time to gossip, you have time to work. Tina raised an eyebrow. Relax. We're just talking. Then talk on your break, Emily said coolly. The challenge in Tina's eyes was clear. She was testing her. Emily didn't flinch. After a tense moment, Tina rolled her eyes and grabbed a tray. Whatever you say, boss. The others followed her lead, but Emily knew this wasn't over. Tina wasn't going to make this easy. None of them were. She had won the title. Now, she had to earn their respect. And that battle was only just beginning. Emily knew the real challenge was just beginning. The restaurant was still filled with the same toxic employees who had ignored her, mistreated others, and done the bare minimum to get by. As she stood in the break room, she met their eyes one by one. Some looked nervous. Others, like Tina, glared at her with open hostility. I'm not here for revenge, Emily said firmly. I'm here to make this place better. If you're willing to work hard and treat each other with respect, I want you here. But if you can't do that, you won't last long. Tina scoffed. Oh, please. You think you're some kind of hero. You don't belong in that office, Emily. Emily held her ground. That's up to Mr. Harrison to decide. And guess what? He already did. Tina rolled her eyes but said nothing more. Others shifted uncomfortably, sensing that the restaurant was no longer going to be a place where they could slack off and get away with it. The next morning, Emily arrived early, determined to set the tone for the day. She checked the inventory, adjusted the schedule, and made sure everything was in place before the first rush. But as soon as the doors opened, things started going wrong. Orders were mysteriously misplaced. Food came out cold. The credit card machine suddenly stopped working. Emily knew it wasn't an accident. Someone was trying to make her look incompetent. Her eyes followed Tina, who was laughing with another server, clearly unfazed by the chaos. Emily clenched her jaw. She wasn't going to let this slide. By lunchtime, customers were complaining. A couple walked out, frustrated. Emily took a deep breath and called a quick staff meeting in the back. Someone is sabotaging this place, she said, looking at each of them. And I promise you, I will find out who. Tina smirked. Maybe you're just bad at this job. Emily met her gaze. Maybe, But if I catch anyone intentionally messing up orders or slowing things down, they'll be out the door. No second chances." A flicker of doubt crossed Tina's face, but she shrugged. "Whatever you say, boss." Emily wasn't fooled. This was only the beginning. She had won the position, but now she had to fight to keep it. And if Tina thought she was going to break, she had another thing coming. Emily stayed late that night, determined to get to the bottom of the sabotage. She double-checked the inventory, reviewed the security footage, and made a plan. If someone wanted her to fail, she was going to catch them. The next morning, she arrived even earlier than usual and stationed herself near the back, watching. It didn't take long. She spotted Tina and another server, Jake, near the register. Jake glanced around before pulling a wire loose from the credit card machine. Emily's pulse quickened. "Gotcha." She stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Having trouble with the machine, Jake?" Jake's face paled. Tina, however, just smirked. "Relax, Emily. Machines break." "Not when someone breaking them on purpose," Emily shot back. Tina shrugged. "Got proof." Emily held up a phone, where she had just recorded the entire thing. Jake swallowed hard. I didn't mean." "You knew exactly what you were doing," Emily interrupted. "Both of you. And I'm done playing games." She turned to Jake and Tina. "You're fired. Get your things and leave. You spent years making this place toxic. It's over. Now get out." Tina and Jake were escorted out, and for the first time in a long time, the restaurant felt lighter. After firing the toxic employees, Emily had to rebuild the team. She called a meeting. "I don't want to fire anyone else," Emily assured them. "But things are going to change. No more favoritism. No more slacking off. If you're here, it's because you want to be part of something better. We're in this together." Marty, the head cook, crossed his arms. "And what if people don't change?" Emily met his gaze. "Then they don't belong here." Slowly, employees nodded in agreement. For the first time since taking over, Emily felt like a real leader. At first, some employees were wary of Emily. They had seen managers come and go, and they weren't sure if she was any different. But then they noticed something strange. She worked harder than anyone. She didn't just sit in her office. She helped in the kitchen when it got busy. She checked on customers. She made sure the waitstaff had fair schedules. Slowly, the employees started trusting her. "You're not like the others," the head cook, Marty, admitted one evening. "You actually care." Emily smiled. "I do, and I need your help to make this place great." Emily knew that hard work alone wouldn't be enough. The restaurant needed structure. She introduced clear rules. No more favoritism. Promotions would be based on merit. Accountability for mistakes. No more covering for slackers. Customer service training. Everyone had to treat customers with respect. It wasn't easy, but within weeks, the team started running smoothly. The toxic culture was gone. Regular customers began noticing the difference. "This place feels different," one woman told Emily. "The service is so much better." Word spread. More customers came in. Sales went up. Mr. Harrison visited one evening and smiled as he watched the packed restaurant. "You did this, Emily." She couldn't believe it. She had turned the place around. Mr. Harrison invited Emily to his office a few weeks later. "You've done more than I expected," he said. "The restaurant is thriving because of you." Emily felt a rush of pride. "Thank you. It wasn't easy." "I know," Mr. Harrison said, "which is why I have another offer for you." Mr. Harrison leaned forward. "I own several restaurants, Emily, and I need someone like you to manage multiple locations." Emily's heart pounded. "You want me to run more than one restaurant?" "I want you to oversee all my restaurants permanently as my regional manager," he said. "You'll have full control. Hiring, policies, expansion, everything." "Yes," he said. "If you can fix this one, you can fix the others." She was terrified, but also excited. That night, Emily sat in her small apartment, thinking about the offer. Could she handle it? Was she really good enough? Then she remembered the girl who had been fired for being too kind. And she remembered the woman who had stood up to corruption and won. She wasn't just good enough. She was ready. Emily accepted the offer. She spent the next few months traveling between restaurants, fixing what was broken. She fired bad managers. She trained new employees. She rebuilt failing locations. She wasn't just managing a restaurant anymore. She was leading a movement. One evening, Emily walked into her first restaurant, the one where it all began. She looked around at the smiling employees, the happy customers, the thriving business. She had once been invisible, overlooked, fired. Now, she was a leader. As she walked out the doors, she realized something. She wasn't just proving herself to others anymore. She had finally proven something to herself. She was meant for this, and her journey was only just beginning. The end. This story shows that kindness, even in the face of adversity, has the power to change lives. Emily's simple act of respect toward a customer led to her own transformation, proving that treating others with integrity and fairness can pave the way for success and leadership. Kindness may go unnoticed at first, but it never fails to leave a lasting impact. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a like and don't forget to subscribe for more heartfelt stories.